It's not easy to create trust with yourself, and it's not easy to improve your internal dialogue. The relationship you have with yourself is the first one you have to work on and you have to improve. If you notice that most of the time your relationship with yourself wanes, and there isn't much growth and there's a lot of critiquing, you're going to behaviorally manifest a lot of these issues. So just because you don't say it out loud, or other people might not notice that you're struggling internally, they're going to notice your behaviors or your lack thereof. So honing in on your internal dialogue and being able to improve that conversation you have with yourself requires a few things. And this is where therapy comes in handy. Look, I get it. Most individuals don't really care for therapy. Most people don't really like having to explore certain aspects of their childhood, and that's fine. It doesn't always have to be about your childhood, but what it really comes down or boils down to is effectiveness in your communication with yourself, and effectiveness in evaluating your emotional, breaking apart your thoughts, your emotions, and your behaviors is a big part of that. And what does that look like with you not going to therapy? This is where journaling comes in handy. So you want to break down the thoughts that are coming up in your mind. So let's say you're going through a situation that's difficult and life is throwing you constant bombardments on issues, right? So for all sake and purpose, let's give an example. You might potentially lose your job. The relationship you have with the leadership is not a good one. You don't get along with them because you don't really agree with a lot of their beliefs and how they are running the company, and you constantly clash, and you're feeling anxious, and that anxiety is coming home with you. You're taking it out on your kids and you're taking it out on your spouse, but you don't really recognize it. So what you do recognize is that your spouse is complaining about how you're treating them. Your kids are misbehaving at home and are misbehaving with you, and you don't know where to go from there. So what do you do? Like, where do you go from there, right? You start to evaluate the thoughts that are coming up. So what are you thinking, right? How are you thinking about yourself? How are you thinking about other people? How are you thinking about the situation you're in? 1. 2, what am I feeling? What have I been feeling? What do I recognize with my emotions? And where are my emotions leading me? And then lastly, you look at the patterns and the behaviors. How are you behaving when you're at work? How are you behaving when you're with your family and with your children? And we're trying to be non-judgmental. So this is where the woohoo part of therapy comes into play. You don't want to judge it because the judgment gets in the way of the fact, right? If you're calling yourself a piece of shit, what does that mean? Does that mean that you're not doing a good job? Does it mean that you are making a mistake in the process? What does that actually mean, that you are a piece of shit, right? Maybe it's poor time management skills, potentially it's bad communication skills, and those things are pragmatic. You can do something about that. You can change your communication. You can change your time management skills. You can't really change a judgment. It's very difficult because it's evaluating on an emotional state. We're not trying to do that. So write down, again, your thoughts and try to understand them from a pragmatic perspective. Write down your emotions, be pragmatic, and write down your behaviors and be pragmatic, and try to find the solutions from there. But that requires trust. You have to trust that you want the right thing for you and that you're doing the right thing for yourself. If you have not developed trust with yourself, then you need to work on that. And how do we do that therapeutically? Well, that's where a lot of self-esteem works, and understanding your childhood and why is it that you don't trust yourself, and to recognize that a lot of your internal dialogue or the things that have gone in the way are not really about you, and potentially something that someone else, right? Whether it was your parent or it was an adult that was just not trustworthy. That is why potentially going to therapy can work for you. And it doesn't have to be therapy. It could be coaching. It could be self-evaluation, but understanding your feelings and emotions from a pragmatic way are going to help you develop more effectiveness at work and more effectiveness with your family, and earn you more money and earn you a better life and have things just happen a little bit more fluidly.